let's talk about a little tutorial. As we've talked about in the past, I often say, and you guys probably are like, yeah, we know, Kim, it can be made into other things. But sometimes we get kind of stuck and we go, well, how's the best way to make that ladder quilt maybe into 2 pillows? Or what's the best way of making the pillows into a 40 by 40 wall hanging? Or what's the best way of taking the square pillows and turning them into a bench pillow? You see what I'm saying? And I know you guys have asked this question many times. So I'm excited to share with you just like the simplest of tutorials to make this really easy on you. These are things that I'm just like doing in Illustrator on the computer. But I'm going to show you how to do it on paper, right? If you don't have programs like that. So in the past, again, if you looked at, say, pumpkins and potions, you may have passed it by because you said, well, it's a ladder quilt, and I don't have a place for a ladder quilt, like you see on the cover. I want your mind to start thinking beyond the project that is seen on the cover, all right? Because you could still take that ladder quilt and make something else. Let's take a look at another example from the past. Here is Cup of Cheer. Oh my word, how we love Cup of Cheer, right? But it is a big quilt, right? And you might be thinking, one, I don't have the time to make a big quilt like that, but I love the blocks. Or you might be thinking, I don't have wall space to place a quilt like that, but I love the blocks and I want to put it on my bench, or I want to put it in a frame or whatever. Here's another example. You may have looked at this one in the past, A Quilty Little Christmas, and said, oh, those are so cute as little mini quilts. But again, I don't have the wall space. I don't want to make a mini quilt. I want to make a big quilt. You know what I'm saying, right? And what's really been fun is to see that already so many of you guys are mixing and matching. But for those of us who are going, but how? Like, what is the best way of doing this, right? And you don't maybe have a software program to manipulate things and change things around. Well, I'm going to show you the easiest way to do it today. Are you ready for it? All right. So the easiest, most straightforward way for this is to take a design that we already have at Kimberbell and to use that as your template, okay? As your template. Let me tell you why this works. Here's an example. This is the mini quilts. It comes from Mini Quilts Volume 2, and this is the August design, all right? So cute as a mini quilt, right? But I want you to think of this, instead of looking at it as, well, this is the quilt that only can be used for these blocks and can only be used for a summer theme. You might look at that template as, gosh, I like the layout of those blocks, and I think I could put some Halloween designs in there instead. The reason why this idea works so well with Kimberbell projects is because all of our projects, like 95% of the blocks, all use our orange pop rulers, which I know you're familiar with, right? Our orange pop rulers, but that means they all come in the same interchangeable sizes. You've seen our blocks. They come in like, you cut it into a 4.5 by 4.5 inch square. You cut it into a 6.5 by 8.5 inch block. You cut it into a 8.5 by 10.5 inch block. They are even numbers, right? Those even numbers are going to make you sing because it makes it really interchangeable to do any kind of design with Kimberbell blocks. Let me show you how easy this is. Okay, so I'm going to take this for an example. Let me grab my pen. Teacher mode, Kim, is coming out, right? And I look at this and I think of it as literally just a template. So that means, okay, whoops, this is a block here, right? These are 2 blocks here. We've got a block here, one here, and one here. And I know when that's all said and done, this is going to end up being a 12 by 12 inch block, right? Template in this case. Now, if I'm wondering, okay, what size are those blocks? Well, it's really easy to figure that out because I can go into the instructions here and you're going to just look at what the finished or the cut size is. So for example, if I go into the little bag block right here, I'm going to look at the very end of those directions where it has the orange pop rulers. See that? And I'm going to say, it tells me to put my, in this case, my 4x4 orange pop ruler over the top. Now, if you don't have orange pop rulers, you can still do this, of course. It's just orange pop rulers makes it super, super easy. But that is what I'm going to cut my block to. And you put your orange pop ruler, your OPR, over that, and you can center it. And now you know that that block is going to be trimmed down to 4.5 by 4.5 inches. Okay, let's go back to our front page, our template. That means this block right here, 4.5 by 4.5 inch block. Okay, I'm just showing you a visual way of doing this, right, on paper. But here's what it's going to start looking like. If I were to look at this block right here, I would know, I know it because I put together the template for you last night, and I'll show you that here in a minute. But this is a 6.5 by 8.5 inch block. The reason I knew that is I could go in the directions like any of us, and you could go to the end where it says what to cut it at. You got 6.5 by 8.5. Okay, this one I believe was a 4.5 by 6.5. And then these are 2.5 inch blocks by 2.5 inch blocks, both of them. Okay, this one and this one. So if I look at this just as a template, this is what my template looks like. Take a screenshot of this. Okay, that's what this template ends up looking like. Okay. Screenshot, screenshot, screenshot. There we go. Okay. So that's the template I just made. Now that I have that template, I can look at any Kimberbell project that uses those same sizes and know that it's going to fit perfectly into this look and feel of how this layout is, right? Well, if I want to make a 12 by 12 quilt and I'm just doing it just like this, then that's all I've got to do. But if I'm going, you know what, I want to make that larger. Well, I could do one of a few things. I could take this template and just repeat it over and over and over again, and maybe even swap around some of those. Maybe instead of this block section being up here, I could swap it with this block section down here. And again, the reason why this method works so well with Kimberbell projects is because, as I mentioned, about 95% of our designs are going to fit perfectly in those block sizes, which also happen to be the sizes of our background quilting files as well. It all works together, right? So this was the August design. This is what I just showed you. And you could, like I said, keep it just as is. But if you said, you know what, I want to add another 12 by 12 big block that's divided up into smaller sections, and I could do that really easily by using the September template that's still there. This is the September one, and you're going to notice up here, let's see, over here, I believe that's a 6.5 by 6.5 inch block. And then, you know, those middle blocks down between the mushroom and the house, those are 2.5 inch sizes, and the mushroom is a 4.5 inch size. Do you see where this can go? And I could then go, gosh, well, if my first 12 inch block was, you know, oh boy, I'm trying to remember just off the top of my head here. Okay, if that was my first 12 inch block, now I'm just going to take another 12 inch block setting template, maybe the one that was in September, and maybe that one looks like, you know, this, but they're all interchangeable. Again, that means you can take any quilt block from Kimberbell projects and just swap them out for other blocks. Do you guys remember I did this maybe 2 years ago on What's New Wednesday? Do you notice where some of these designs have come from over the years at Kimberbell? If you are a Kimberbell fan through and through, you might recognize that these blocks were not part of this original pillow. But because I could just go, you know what, I'm going to use this, I'm going to create a template in my mind, right? This can become your template. And do you guys remember this pie and this pie and this pie? It all comes from Sweet as Pie. That used to be is still a more autumn Thanksgiving look to the pies. In fact, this one was a pumpkin pie. But just by changing out the fabric on there and adding, my little dollop of whipped cream on there, like it was on the pumpkin pie, but then I added a little dimensional strawberry from our Woolfelt berries collection. Now it's a strawberry pie, and I call this Country Fair. And now all of a sudden, it doesn't look like a Thanksgiving theme. It's the country fair theme, right? And if you want this recipe, so to speak, it's free at Kimberbell. Now, the designs aren't free. Those are from a whole collection of other Kimberbell projects, but my guess is you probably have a lot of those designs. And if you're wondering what that template looks like, you can print it out right there. That template right there, you can go, gosh, I really like this, but maybe I want to use that template for other, maybe a Christmas pillow instead. You've got the template right there for you. And then you've got this is literally written out for you what I used for, say, like, let's look at the strawberry pie, for example. It'll tell you what block size that is. It's a 6.5 by 6.5. It'll tell you what quilting I used. I used plaid 1, and it will tell you where the design came from. And in this case, it is from the Sweet as Pie bench pillow. But this is how simple it is to take any Kimberbell project, love the template, but just swap out your own blocks for it. So next week, when this comes out, the Star Spangled Beauty, I want you to think first before you pass it up and say, well, I'm not into ladder quilts. I'd really like that as a 40 by 40 quilt, or I'd really love that as, another size, a pillow quilt. Think of it again as just the designs itself and interchange those blocks. Now, let me give you another little tip that you're just going to go, oh, that was easy. Why didn't I think of that? But these are little extracts, right? Remember how at the end of any of our projects, you can it'll show you step by step how to put these blocks together. Here's the good news, you guys. These are all at scale, so with each other. So what you could do is cut those apart and almost think of it as a puzzle piece, right? It's kind of fun, kind of shift it around. So I actually did that with this, okay? Those are the extracts towards the end of the project, right? And I just cut them apart like a puzzle piece. Look at this. They're so cute. All right. I got my little square and a square block. Again, if you have computer software, that's sometimes just as easy or easier, but this is also really easy, right? You got your little witch block, and now you can have fun going, ooh, I could put that here. Oh, I think I'm going to shift this over here. You see what I'm saying? It makes it really simple. And then this way you could also go, you know what? These are my favorite quilt blocks in the project. These are the only ones I'm going to stitch out. And now I can make it totally different. Love that, right? By visually seeing it before I actually piece this thing together. All right. So that's another idea for you on how to change this up into a whole nother project. Maybe you want this pillow as a ladder quilt. Well, print out the ones that you like. Maybe then go to another Kimberbell Halloween quilt, print out those ones you like. Maybe go to another Halloween project of Kimberbell's, print those out, and now have fun playing with it as a puzzle piece. Now, finally, one more little idea for you is this is more, again, maybe old school, but I don't always have my computer with me, and I might have like an idea come to me and I go, oh, I just want to jot that down. These are, you've seen them before. They're bullet journals, and a bullet journal just has the little tiny dots going across it. It's like a grid, right? Or you could use graph paper. I could do a couple of things. Now, this is a kind of a small notebook. And so for a notebook this size, for as many dots that are in there, I could think of each of these little squares, right? If I can start connecting dots, I could think of them as 1-inch squares. And I could probably fit maybe like a pillow, definitely like a 12 by 12 mini wall hanging would fit on there, using those as just 1-inch squares. Now, if I was doing a really big quilt, I might look at each of those squares, instead of representing 1 inch, I would represent it in my mind as a 2-inch square. Does that make sense? So just think about the scale here, but this is 1-inch block, 1-inch block, 1-inch block. For example, I say to myself, I want to make a 12 by 12 inch design. So I could take either graph paper or something like a bullet journal, and I could go, let's see if I can do this for you. I'm going to connect the dots. I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to, just play around with some ideas. I'd probably do this in pencil because you might, want to erase as you go. But 1, 2, I want to make it 12 inches, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, then I'm going to make it 12 inches down this way, and then across it'll be 12, and then across down it'll be 12. Okay, you get the idea. So now in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I've got blocks that are either 4.5 by 4.5. I've got blocks that are 6.5 by 8.5. But Kim, those are 1-inch squares. Think about this as finished sizes, like after your fabric has been sewn together. So if I'm thinking, okay, a 4.5 by 4.5 inch block, I'm going to put in there, but really I'm only going to mark it as a 4 by 4 size, right? Okay, because this is finished. This is not seams included. So just for my own diagram, I'm going, okay, right here in this corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, there we go, 4. Okay, I know that is a 4 by 4 square here, but in reality, my block size is what? 4.5 by 4.5. And then maybe I go, oh, you know what? I want to do like a 6.5 by 8.5 inch block, because I've got one of those, right? I've got this right here. I've got my 6.5 by 8.5 inch block. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then down 8 of them, 7, 8. Oh, awesome. That takes me right to the bottom, right? And now that's, instead of a 6 by 8, that's what we drew because this is finished size, but we're cutting it, right? So with our orange pop rulers, 6.5, or just cut it, 6.5 by 8.5. Well, I want this to line up here and maybe put 2 2-inch blocks there. So do you see how this can work? So simple. Maybe I start with the size of a ladder quilt, but I could do that on here. I could draw the end in mind. I could start with a 20 by 60 inch size, right? I could even add in my borders. I mean, you guys, the possibilities are endless. You get what I'm saying. You just go over 1, 2, you go over with the size that you want to end up with, and then you start filling it in. You start saying, Oh, well, I want a 2-inch border on this. Easy. Okay. I'm going to go down 1, 2, and over 1, 2. And now I know. Wow, that's lovely, isn't it? What this is what happens when you try to draw sideways here. Okay, but you get the idea. If this is a 2-inch border, what are you cutting? You're cutting it at 2.5 because again, this is finished, but your cut size needs to be that extra half inch to allow for the seams. And now you start filling in your blocks, and pretty soon you got all kinds of cool things going on, right? That's how easy it can be, my friends. So either you can make it really simple on yourself and start with a template that you already like from Kimberbell, and you go, I like the layout. Now I'm just going to plug in a different design. Or if you want to have even more flexibility with something like that, you could do graph paper, a bullet journal, something like that. And there you go. That's how easy it is.